How's it going, everybody, and welcome to the College Football Podcast with your host, Alec Pecado, on Tuesday, December 17th at 5:30. Today's podcast episode is another episode of the transfer portal. Today is running back and tight ends. I will give you my predictions on how this works. I will pull up, for example, a running back, and I will give you my thoughts, and then I'll give you 3 schools they should go to, and then I think the school they are going to ultimately end up at. And we are going to hop right into it because this is going to be very long. So we start with the running backs, and we start with... We need to make sure we have no more. These are all the guys that are uncommitted. So Shane Porter from North Texas is in the portal. 0 stars, which again, all these recruiting websites are horrible at ranking these guys stars, giving them the stars. And Shane Porter, I watched a whole lot of the American Athletic Conference, just like I watched every other conference, even the FCS. I watched a little FCS, but Shane Porter, to me, he's a physic. He got some run with North Texas last year. But to me, he's a between the tackles kind of running back. Can get you 6 to 7 yards. And the 3 schools that should be interested in Shane Porter. Number 3, Texas State. He could stay in the state of Texas, and he could go stay in the group of 5, but change conferences and go to the Sun Belt. And I feel like he'd fit. He could try to go the Power 4 route, which I'll tell you 2 teams that should go after him in the Power 4 in a minute. But with Texas State, he gets to stay in the state of Texas. Not saying he'll get a big NIL bag from Texas State if he decides to go there, but I think he will be a lot more productive at Texas State if he goes there than he will be if he stays at North Texas. Number 2, the number 2 team that should be interested in Mr. Porter in the portal is Clemson. Yes. You never hear me talk about Clemson in the transfer portal. I guess I have to start talking about them now because they did just get a transfer, which when everybody commits to their new school, I will do another transfer portal video where I go over all the transfers and what I think of them, and if I thought they were good transfers or bad transfers. But Shane Porter, second team is Clemson. Phil Mafah is coming back, but they need somebody behind him to be, because they do rotate running backs. Mafah is not the clear bell cow at Clemson. So I think Shane Porter to Clemson could be another good option. And number 1, and this team has already talked about how they do want to go out in the transfer portal and get at least 1 transfer portal running back. They are in the Big Ten. They play Saturday night at 8:00. It is Ohio State. They are losing both Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins at the end of the season. So therefore, I think they should be at the top. There's a couple running backs they should be at the top of the list for, and Mr. Shane Porter is one. Now we've got Ryder Bumgarner, 2-star. Like I said, ignore these recruiting sites and how they rank these kids. How many stars they give them. Because some of these kids are going to be really good, even if they're a 2-star or a 0-star. Ryder Bumgarner, Didn't get a lot of playing time in Washington. Obviously, that's why he's in the portal. He's a between the tackles physical running back, in my opinion. 3 schools that should be interested in him. Number 3, Boise State. They're losing Ashton Jeanty to the NFL. They're going to need a running back to replace Jeanty. And I think Ryder Bumgarner can be that replacement for Boise State. Number 2, Miami. I know Damian Martinez is coming back. I'm pretty sure he has 1 year of eligibility left. But I think Ryder could be the next man in line at Miami, whether Damian Martinez leaves for the draft, comes back, or if Damian Martinez gets injured, which we don't wish injury upon anybody. And number 1 team that you go after. Oh, Shane Porter. I did not say where he's going to go. I think he ends up at Ohio State. And the number 1 team that should be in on Ryder Bumgarner is Nebraska, who is losing a running back. And ultimately, I do think he ends up going to Nebraska. Speaking of Nebraska, the next guy on here is Dante Dowdle. He is 6'2", 225. And I watched his film. He is he's a speed merchant. He's fast, speed, quick feet. He gets a lot of carries on the goal line. He's elusive. And the 3 schools that I think are going to be interested in him are South Florida, Texas Tech, and Miami. And ultimately, Dante Dowdle is probably going to transfer to Miami. Then you've got Roman Hemby, the ex-Maryland running back. And Hemby was at Nebraska before. So Roman Hemby, quick / elusive. And yes, Dante Dowdle is the same thing. I forgot to write that down. But back to Roman Hemby. Quick and elusive, versatile, bounces off tackles, good receiving back, very physical, shifty. He gets a lot of carries on the goal line. And when you're looking for a running back, that is the one thing you look for, is a guy that can be shifty and good receiver and gets carries on the goal line. And the 3 schools I think that should be in on Mr. Hemby are Miami, Florida, LSU, Ole Miss, Bama, and South Carolina. So there's 4 SEC schools in there and an ACC school. Ultimately, I think he's going to end up going to South Carolina. The next running back we got is Dominic Johnson out of TCU. 6'1", 2 short guy, but he's 230 pounds. That's a lot of weight for a guy that's only 6'1". With him, quick. I'll give you a couple adjectives on him. Quick, and he is very shifty. 3 schools that need to be in on him, and the one that I think he's ultimately going to go to. Number 3, Michigan. Michigan needs a running back. They're losing Donovan Edwards to the NFL, for 1. 2, I think Khalil Mullings has proven that he can work in a committee taking like 60-70% of the touches. And then you bring in a guy like Dominic Johnson, and he then becomes that number 2 running back for 1-2 punch with Khalil Mullings. So that's number 3. Number 2, South Carolina. And I think Dominic Johnson going to South Carolina would make a lot of sense for one reason. I think Raheem Rocket Sanders is gone after this year. I think he's going to go to the NFL after South Carolina has its bowl game, unless he decides to come back for another year. If he doesn't, the Dominic Johnson to South Carolina makes a lot of sense. And the number one team that should be in on Dominic Johnson, the running back, is he could go the group of 5 route and go to like Texas State and build his stock back up at Texas State, then get in the portal again next year and go back to the Power 4 route. Ultimately, I think he's going to end up going to Michigan. Jason Collins Jr., Morgan State running back. 3 schools that should be interested in him. I could not find, I tried to look up tape on him. Couldn't find any. If anybody can find tape on Jason Collins Jr., please send it to me in the comment section of this video or my link to my Twitter, which is in my profile. Send it to me there or send it to me in the comment section of this video. I would love to watch. I would like to watch some tape on Jason Collins Jr. Again, I've said this numerous times. Ignore the rating, the stars that these recruiting websites are giving the kids. As you see, Collins is a 0-star recruit. 3 schools that should be interested in him. He's obviously coming out from the FCS. Number 3, go to James Madison. You could be the number 1 or number 2 back at James Madison and rush for 700, 800, maybe 1,000 yards. And you get your name on the map. Then that way you could go into portal again if you wanted to and hop in the portal and go to a bigger school. So number 3 was James Madison. Number 2, Ohio State. Ohio State did say that they want to get at least 1 running back from the transfer portal. And I could see that being Jason Collins Jr. They, like I just said about one of the other guys, one of the first guys we talked about, how Ohio State's going to need a running back because they're losing 2 to the draft. And I think Jason Collins Jr. could fit that. And number 1, Boston College. They lost Thomas Castellanos. They're probably going to lose a couple other guys, including Kai Robichaux. And I think Jason Collins Jr. would be a nice replacement for Boston College at running back. Ultimately, I think that is where he's going to commit to in the transfer portal is Boston College. Now we got 3 guys. The next 3 are Braylon Russell, Christian Washington, and Kanye Abudo. Ultimately, Russell, I think, is probably going to transfer to maybe Ole Miss. I could see Ole Miss, Christian Washington. And there's going to be some guys where I just, right off rip, I tell you where I think they're going to commit to in the transfer portal. Christian Washington, he's going to want a big NIL bag. I could see him going to North Carolina to play with Bill Belichick. And Kanye Udo, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He was at Army this year. Army has a really good bowl game, the Independence Bowl, but obviously, as you see, he is not going to be playing in the Independence Bowl. So I think he's going to commit. He's going to transfer if he chooses to. He's going to transfer to Mississippi State. The next three on the list: Dante Wack, Cameron Seldon, and Anderson Castile. Donta was at UMass. I think he's going to transfer to Miami of Ohio because Miami of Ohio is losing a couple running backs. And I think they need a running back. So they are going to acquire the services of Dante Wack. Dante Wack in the transfer portal. Cameron Seldon was at Tennessee. This is a little bit of a tougher one. He could go the group of 5 route and go to like a Missouri State, Texas State, or somewhere like that. Or ultimately, I see him going to maybe Louisville and starting at running back for Louisville. I think he commits to Louisville. Anderson Castile. Ultimately, I think Castile might take his name out of the portal at some point and go back to App State. We've got Caden Collins from San Jose State. I think he's going to transfer to Auburn because Auburn does need running backs, and I think he would fit well in Auburn. We're going to do a couple more, then we're going to get over to tight end. Kamarion Baldwin, James Madison running back. 5'9", 215. Ultimately, I think he's going to transfer to Indiana to play for his old coach, Kirk Cignetti. And the last running back we are doing is Justice Haynes, the Alabama running back that's in the portal. I did watch some film on him. Justice Haynes, physical, very physical. At the point of contact, he is not easy to take down. That's the one thing that stuck out to me in his film. He's very physical. He bounces off tacklers, and yes, burst. And the other thing I noticed with Justice Haynes is he's got that quick burst and he bounces off tacklers and just keeps running. And then he has quick feet, very shifty, safety valve, which means he's good at catching the ball out of the backfield. And he also gets goal line carries. Ultimately, the 3 schools that are in on, there's 4 schools that should be in on him. Number 4, Ole Miss. They are talking about they want to add a running back out of the portal as well. So, because they're losing a couple, Ulysses Bentley and Henry Parrish. So, Ole Miss is in on him. University of Texas, because they are losing. They do have CJ Dexter coming back, and they have the kid that's been playing this year that's been playing really well. But I feel like they need a third guy in that backfield to have a 3-headed attack at running back. Number 2 team that should be in on Justice Haynes is Alabama. Nope, is Michigan. And ultimately, Michigan, I said it earlier about a couple guys. I think Michigan does need to add at least one more running back. And the number 1 team, and it's been talked about, how this team is interested, like I said earlier, in adding running backs out of the portal. It is Ohio State. And ultimately, that is where I think Justice Haynes ends up going, is Ohio State. Okay, now we get to the tight ends that are uncommitted in the well. There is one tight end that did commit submersion. We're not going to talk about him. We were talking about Preston Howard, 6'4", 231 tight end. He was at Maryland last year. I could see him. There's 2 schools I could see him choosing to go to. One being in the Big Ten, being Ohio State. Ohio State does need a tight end because I think Will Kazmarek is going to ultimately go pro next year after the playoff game. Or I could see him going to Purdue and being a tight end at Purdue. Ultimately, I think Preston Howard is going to commit to Ohio State and transfer to Ohio State. We're going to do like 4 or 5 tight ends and then call it a night. So we go Florida. Gavin Hill, he has not been crystal balled anymore yet. He is not signed anywhere in the portal. But Gavin Hill, tight end, former school was Florida. He's 6'3", 246. There's a couple schools I could see him going to. One being Ole Miss. I feel like Caden Prescorn is gone after this year. So that gives me the sense that maybe they want to add a tight end. Sorry if I'm moving the mic. I'm trying to find a perfect angle for it. But that gives me the sense that Ole Miss might want to think about adding tight end in the portal. And I think adding Gavin Hill would be a good move for Ole Miss. And in Tennessee struggled with tight ends. Finding one in the portal or signing one out of high school. So I think Tennessee could be another team that goes after a tight end. Ultimately, I think he's going to Ole Miss. You got Ty Stamey. I'm going to say right off rip, I think he's going to go to Boise State. Because Boise State needs tight end. Nate Bo Kircher. I think so. He was at Nebraska this year. A very little playing time. I think he's going to transfer to a school that peppers tight ends with targets in Oregon. I think he's going to transfer inside the Big Ten and go to Oregon. You've got Josh Faniola, Oklahoma. I think he's going to transfer to Oklahoma State. If they're already committed somewhere, we don't talk about them. AJ Rollins, tight end from Nebraska. Again, another Nebraska tight end. I think he's going to transfer to Ole Miss. Toledo tight end Tyson Smith, 6'3", 230. Now we get into, I think there's 3 schools that should go after Tyson. He seems like the kind of receiving tight end that somebody like an Ohio State. Number 3, Ohio State. I think Ohio State should go after him. They need a tight end. Jelani Thurman might not work out. Bennett Christian can't stay on the field consistently. So Tyson Smith could be the perfect fit for Ohio State. Number 2, Alabama. Yes, I said it. Alabama does need a tight end. And I think this kid could fit right in at Alabama. Number 1, he goes to the Big Ten and goes to Washington. And then we've got Eric Gilbert. Eric Gilbert. Former 5-star. He tried his luck at Georgia. He tried at LSU. Tried at Nebraska. All 3 teams. No, the LSU. He tried there as a true freshman. Had up and down freshman season. Then he went over to Nebraska. And he got in trouble. Where's he going to end up? In the portal. I think he ends up going, and it's sad to say this, former 5-star, he's probably going to end up either going down to the group of 5 to like a Memphis, Tulane, James Madison, Louisiana, or he goes the FCS route. He goes to like Morgan State or Tarleton State. Ultimately, I think he does commit to a group of 5 team, and it will be Memphis. And that is going to, oh wait, no, that is not going to do it. Hold on, why is it doing that? Can y'all see me? Hold up. Reload. Hold up, we're on to take that picture back. There we go. And then Saturday night, we have a watch party for the Ohio State Tennessee game at 8:00. We have 2 podcast episodes. We have 3 more podcast episodes this week. 2 of them being wrestling. 1 tomorrow at 5:45 and 1 Thursday at 5:45. And a video Thursday morning at 11 a.m. previewing all the college football playoff games coming up. But that's going to wrap up this episode of the College Football Podcast. With Alec Pecano, I will see everybody tomorrow.